welcome. Thank you all for being with us again this Sunday evening. It's so good to have you with us. We're on the last lap, as we would say. We're on to lesson 6, and which is the last lesson in the book. And I'll be starting at page 34. I was browsing last night actually, or early this morning. I don't know the difference now. And I came across an article, and this is how it started, and I just want to share it with you. It's written by a lady called Deborah Sweeney, and she's the CEO of mycorporation.com, and it's an online legal service for female entrepreneurs and businesses. And it reads, in the years since the pandemic hit, the most successful business leaders have placed the needs of employees ahead of themselves. As we move farther into 2021, the best leaders will continue to inspire, motivate, and empower their teams, while also showing team members that they believe in them. This is a management style often referred to as servant leadership. Those who practice servant leadership have a competitive advantage over those that do not. If the COVID-19 pandemic has taught businesses anything, it's the importance of resilient, purposeful leadership. And I was so pleased to read that article, to know that servant leadership is the leadership that will stand the test of time. And that is the whole thing we are doing. So don't forget, we say it's not an event, it's a process. So you have to keep at it. And I am sure I'm going to follow up with this Deborah Sweeney and see what more she has to say about servant leaders in this environment. In this lesson, we are going to examine the art of decision making and how it affects not only our lives, but the lives of those who follow us. Can I share screen now, please? Right, the title of the lesson is Your Decision Determines Your Destiny. And we're looking at effective leadership requires making wise decisions. In this lesson, we will examine the art of decision making and how it affects not only our own lives, but the lives of those who follow us. Let's look at a Bible reading where we can refer to some conclusions regarding our choices. It's not going to take you too long. We're looking at Joshua chapter 24, verse 14 to 21. I'm going to read it kind of quickly. Now fear the Lord and serve him with all your faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshipped beyond the Euphrates River and Egypt and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourself this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Joshua said to the people, you are not able to serve the Lord. He's a holy God. He's a jealous God. He will not forgive your rebellion and your sins. But the people said to Joshua, no, we will serve the Lord. When we look at this scripture, we can pull out so many things. Let's look at conclusions about our choices and refer to the scriptures. Leaders bring people to a point of decision. And this is page 34 in your book. Leaders bring people to a point of decision. Let's look back at Joshua. Joshua talked to the people. He told them about what they used to do, what is required of them. And he brought them to that point where they made decision. Number two, in some areas, we have no choice. There are going to be times that we're in situations and we don't have a choice. But in this example we have, they had a choice. They had a choice. And they made a responsible choice. We are responsible for making right choices. Whatever situation we are in control. We are the persons to make the right decision. The sooner we make the right choices, the better. If we look back at that scripture, they could have dilly-dallied. They could have, Joshua went on to tell them, I don't think y'all good enough to make this decision. I don't think y'all do so much things that this thing. But no, this says, no, based on your decision, we are going to make decision. Leaders make choices first. And if I had written this, I would put leaders' choices influence others because the leaders made choice first. Joshua's decision had influenced the others. And because he made the decision first, then then they were able to make the decision. And then they could say, yes, we will serve the Lord. Okay? So there are certain choices that we will have to make. And we should always remember to make the right choice. But as leaders, we also have to remember we should make the right choices first. We make the choices first, and then our followers are influenced. Let's look at this diagram. Truth be told, when I first looked at this diagram in the book, I was like, what? But we are talking here about conditions on the left and choices on the right. When a baby is born, and this is the column in the left, at birth, it's an involuntary stage of life. A baby doesn't have much choice in making decisions regardless of the conditions. The decisions are made for the baby. And as the baby grows, then you find as it goes into adulthood, the parent lets go then, and the baby starts to make some choices. And as we go into adulthood, we make more choices. When you're ready to do your 11 plus, you're given a chance to say what school you'd like to go to. Then you get a little older, you have to do exams. You're given choices. What subjects do you want to take? And then when you go a little further, you're given choices. What career path do you want to take as you move into adulthood? So this rectangle here represents life from birth to adulthood. The more we mature in life, the more we must take responsibility for the choices that we make. Even though I must say that there are some adults who remain in this birth stage, not birth literally, but to the left, and do not make choices because the adults in their lives don't allow them to make choices. I mean, for example, some men 42 years old and still living home with a mother would make a decision. Not that they had a girlfriend. They had girlfriends, but they can't make a choice. Some persons are afraid to make choices, so they remain in this column here where they are controlled by the conditions. And the conditions that these gentlemen have to live under are the conditions in the house of the mother or the aunt, whoever it is. They do not enjoy the choices of freedom as if they were living on their own. There's still certain conditions, even though they're adults, there's still certain conditions that they have to live under. Early in life, we're in an involuntary state. Later in life, it's voluntary. Early in life, others choose for us. As we grow later in life, we make decisions we choose. Early in life, we react to all the conditions around us. Later in life, we initiate, and we also initiate change. Let's look at 6 phases of decision making in page 36 of your book. Once you recognize that the good decision making part is the territory of being a very good leader, then you should understand that there are 6 phases of this decision-making process. Number 1, the foundation stage. What is the history? This is where, and we're looking at an organizational or a church or whatever. This is, we're in that, that's what we're thinking of now. The foundation stage. You must understand what happened before you arrive, what the history was, what underlying things, what skeletons, whatever they have swept under the carpet. What were the struggles of the organization? What were the struggles in the church? Were there any breakups in the church, breakaways in the church? Did people leave the church on not so good terms? Also, you need to know what the victories have been. What's the culture of the organization? Are you in a situation? I remember once I went into an organization, I found myself completely lost because it was a situation where when there was a vacancy, somebody who knew somebody brought in somebody, and it was that kind of thing. And when I got there, nobody knew me. So you need to understand the culture of the organization and why it's like that. And most importantly, what are the people's goals and what are their expectations? Some people come to church every day, they just come to church every week, and they're quite comfortable with just coming to church. As a good leader, you need to spend some time at the foundation stage. Then we move on to the fact stage. We like to go to the facts stage, even though sometimes the things in the fact stage are not factual, but we believe them. This is where you gather all the information available to you concerning the situation. And I always hear there are always three sides to a story: his, hers, and the truth. And as leaders, we have to listen to all sides of the stories before we make any decisions. Your investigation will help you go beyond guesswork. You must have hard data to use in making decisions. You can't go by he say, she say, them say, all that. You must have facts. Effective leaders read their people before they lead their people. This is in the feedback stage. What are the emotions? You have to know your people before you can lead them comfortably. You have to talk to your people, find out where they're at, visit them where they're at, be with them where they're at before you can attempt to lead them. Like somebody would say, you have to win the confidence first before you can move on. You have to get the pulse of the people, know where they are. If you go into a place and the people don't want you, you're going to know. Early o'clock, you're going to know because you're going to meet resistance. So the feedback stage is important. And then you go on the focus stage. What is the wise choice? This is a key question in all decision making. Proverb tells us that wisdom cries out on the street, but few listen. When we are forced to make a decision, God's wisdom almost always surfaces when we simply pose the question, what is the wise choice? The greatest difficulty in making decisions is not knowing the right decision, but by making it. And staying focused is very important. You can't stay forever at this stage without making a decision. At this point, when you come to focus stage, when you have to develop a vision or a mission statement, you need to make a decision. You can't be in an organization 6 months and not come up with a vision statement or mission statement yet. At this point, you need to make your decision. And after you've made your decision, you move on to your fruit stage. How can this decision bear fruit and successful? Now, if you've done all your homework and you've done all the foundation investigation, you've gotten all your facts together, you've gone to know the people, you know the pulse of the people, and you've made a decision, then you should bear fruit, right? Then you should bear fruit. Of course, you don't bear fruit without prayer. Whatever you're supposed to be doing at this stage, you do it with prayer. Then we move on to the forward stage. It's time to move. When do we move? The wrong decision at the wrong time? equals a disaster. The wrong decision at the right time is a mistake. And it would be a mistake because if you have done your homework, you would know that it's not a good decision. And don't be pressured by a time to make a decision. It has to be the right time. The right decision at the wrong time is totally unacceptable. That means you have not done something, you've not read the pulse, something is not right. If you may have gone to the drawing table and come up with the decision, okay, this is the decision to make. God may have told you that, yeah, this is the decision to make. But then if you don't listen to God and if you don't listen to the people and you do it the wrong time, it's totally unacceptable and it's not going to go down well. If you've done your homework, you've listened to God, you've talked to God, and you're in sync, the right decision at the right time is guaranteed success. Let's look at a process for decision making. James 1:1-8 says, "Consider pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If you lack wisdom, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But when you act, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all he does." On page 36 in your books. The first thing you should do is consider. Contemplation is the first thing. What does contemplation mean? Consider. And the first thing James says, consider. When you're about to do anything, contemplate, consider, stop. James is saying, stop, consider joy. Don't start worrying about everything, right? The next thing we're going to look at is supplication. God give us struggles, but James says, if we lack wisdom, if any of you lack wisdom, you should ask God. Supplication, ask God. And he tells us he gives it generously. Anticipation. If we do ask God for wisdom, we must ask in faith. Verse 6 says, but when you ask, you must believe and not doubt. Question, what is the decision you face that you feel you don't have the wisdom to make? You might be facing the decision now. James tells us, if you lack wisdom, ask God. And when you ask, you must believe. Decision making in the gray areas. Nobody likes gray areas. It's either black or white. Leaders regularly face choices that affect not only their own lives, but the lives of many others. And especially in this COVID environment. What's more, many of these decisions have no clear answer. They do not appear black or white, but gray. So how does a leader make a good decision in these areas? Paul tells us about a way to do this. We need the wisdom in the gray areas. Refer to that same text. We first need to prioritize God's people. Leaders must not make decisions based upon what benefits them most. Leaders must not make decisions based on what benefits them most. The term others in the scripture, that's in 1 Corinthians 10:24, when Paul referred to others, he was talking about When he said others, he was talking about, he said, I'm referring to the other person's conscience, not yours. So we should always be thinking about the other person and not us. And that should be our priority. We could prioritize God's people. They are different and are not likely to see the issue as you do. But because of the way you're seeing it, you still have to make the decision based on how your followers are seeing you. You must choose what is best for them. Take yourself out of the picture, basically, and just ask yourself the question, who will benefit most from this decision? As leaders, you have to take yourself out of the picture many times and think about the others. Who benefits from this? The next thing is you need to pursue God's glory. I'm getting myself. Pursue God's glory. Does the decision glorify God? And sometimes we find ourselves as leaders, we don't go that far in our thinking. The decision solves an immediate problem and we go with it. But we should always ensure that at the end of what we do, because we do everything that we do it unto God. So any big decision, any little decision should always pursue God's glory. And lastly, you need to perceive God's purpose. The ultimate purpose for our being here on earth is to bring others to Christ. While leaders may have many small goals, our ultimate goal is to bring persons into the kingdom. We must always move forward, fulfilling the mission. Ask yourself, will this decision please God and fulfill his purpose in my life here on earth? We're going to look at some principles on decision making. If wise choices are great, we need to act on them and embrace these principles. Number one, choice, not chance, determines my destiny. Choice, not chance. We don't make decisions by chance. We make a choice, having had all the information, having done all our homework, we make a choice. And the choice that you make determines your destiny. And as good leaders, we are going to make the better choices, the best choice, based on the information that we have received, based on our analysis, based on hearing from God. We're going to make the wise choice. We don't do things by chance. You don't up and say, oh, let me do so and so. It's a well thought out decision, and you make that choice. To choose not to decide is to choose to let someone else control your life. To choose not to decide is to choose to let someone else control your life. Not only your life, if you choose not to decide to make a decision in a department in your church or in a department in your organization, you have decided to let someone else control, and you are no longer in control. To choose to decide is to take responsibility. When you make the choice to decide you're going to do something, you are taking responsibility as a leader. Indecision is the mark of a fearful mind. And we talked about some persons last night, I'm forgetting them now, but the ones who don't like to make decisions and him in a halt and wait and wait. When you are fearful, indecision creeps in. As good leaders, you have to be decisive. You have to know it's time to make a decision and make a decision. Too many of us know you have a decision to make. The situation is getting out of hand, it's getting out of control, but you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting. Followers can live without certainty, but they cannot live without clarity. Right now, we live in an uncertain environment because of COVID. but we would be so uncomfortable if there wasn't any clarity in the instructions and the information that was being fed to us. Likewise, followers are the same. They can understand if you're in a situation and everything is not certain, but they need you to be clear. Call it as it is. Prime Minister decides she's going to shut it down all year's night. People plan to go to church, and she said we're shutting it down. It was uncertainty, but it was clarity. She was clear on it, and we understood. Everybody may not have agreed, but her decision was clear, and we understood. The leader who insists on perfect knowledge before he decides never decides. 70% at the right time is better than 100%. Too late. If you decide with some knowledge based on the amount of knowledge that you have, it is better than not making a decision and then it's too late. So based on all the information we had before when we talked about doing your research and getting to befriend people and checking your foundation and all that, if you've done all of that, you may never come to the point where you have perfect knowledge, but you come to a point where you have enough knowledge by the help of God to make a good decision. Decisions release energy, insight, commitment, and support. You'll be surprised to see how many people would suddenly come on board and say, oh yes, I will help you with that. I can do that. But when you remain in a stage where you're not making a decision, people get frustrated, people walk away. So make the decision, and then you will get people coming in and buying into it and supporting your decision. The larger the group of followers, the greater the pressure to conform. Oh yes, and we know that. The more people you have to make a decision, the more pressure is. But as leaders, you don't bow to pressure. Decision is decision. When you get all your facts together, you make your decision. And all the decisions may not be favorable to everybody, but you make a wise decision. Great people are ordinary people who make extraordinary decisions. Sometimes people are looking for you to make a particular decision. And God is saying to you, Diane, what telling you? And at first you make a decision that might seem different and it's extraordinary decision. It may not be favorable at first, but it's favorable in God's sight because you have listened to God and you have made that extraordinary decision, not the decision that 70% of the people were thinking that you would make. Decisions should be made at the lowest possible level in the organization. And I know that have some people would have a problem with this, but my philosophy is I agree with it. If you have the caretaker of the church, if you said church begins at 9, the caretaker should be here at 8:30 to open the church, and the caretaker decides, you know something, I see people passing here early. I should open church at 8 o'clock, you know. If the caretaker come to you and say, I want to open your church at 8 o'clock, as a good leader, you should say, why you want to open church? I tell you don't open it till 8:30. But the person working with the situation on the ground, he knows better than you. And any good leader allows persons based on their expertise in the area. They do the job, they know the job. And a good leader allows those persons at the lower level to make decisions for the organizations. Very often they have the pulse and they know so much better than you. Success is not for the chosen few, but for the few who choose. Success is not for the chosen few, but for the few who choose. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I got there so quickly I didn't realize it because I was conscious of the time, and we need to do a lot of things. Right. And I always finish with a personal assessment, a time for you to spend just with yourself. Ask yourself, what decisions in my leadership do I hesitate to make? By hesitating to make some decisions, sometimes we waste time, sometimes we cause some issues, and sometimes it can be expensive depending on the delay in making the decision. It can cost you. It can cost you financially. It can cost you in human resources when you don't make a decision. So as leaders, what decisions in your leadership do you hesitate to make? And why do you hesitate? Are you afraid to make a choice? And in your opinion, what make decisions difficult to make? And the application for tonight, list 2 action steps I will take to make better decisions. List 2 action steps to make better decisions. As we said last night, when we are finished here, it does not finish. It is only begun with you, because we expect you to go home and go back through these booklets. We expect you to find a friend, a group, or somebody and go through the booklet again. There's so much information in it. There are a lot of things that we didn't go into in depth that you can spend some time in your group Bible study or in your personal study. The answers for all the questions are located in page 39 and 40 of your notebook. This is the end of lesson 6. I want to thank you, and we now open for any questions, and I would invite Brother Clovis as well to come back in case you have any questions. I will stop sharing my screen. Any questions? That's good.
Hi, good. You can hear me?
Yes, please.
All right, good evening. First of all, excellent presentation by both of you for the entire weekend. Really appreciate all the wealth of information that was shared.
Thank you.
Um, my question slash sharing is that I personally, and there's a sharing moment, I have general anxiety disorder, which makes me inherently indecisive because of my anxiety. So that's something that I'm working on getting therapy for and everything. So it is not that I am deliberately indecisive. It's just the way my brain is wired because of my anxiety. So how do you I guess that's probably a question for my therapist, but I mean asking you guys as leaders, how do you deal with anxiety and leadership? If that's a if you understand me.
Perhaps Clovis can take that, because my first question was going to ask you is, if you experience anxiety in your personal life
Yeah,
or in your professional life, or both?
both.
Okay, so now Clovis will answer.
Yeah. Um, it's a tough one, quite honestly. I think the best way to deal with it would be to plan plan. I see the need for you to spend a lot of time planning and in pre-planning, and in preparing, so that at the time, the way I find my mind works is, if you if there's something for you to do and you don't get it done, um, you get a it's like an alarm comes in and says, have you done this thing? And you might, in your mind, you're saying no. Maybe 10 minutes later, it comes back. Have you done it? 5 minutes. Have you done it? And then it begins like almost like a buzz. And so part of what I believe persons who struggle with anxiety and that kind of disorder, they have to prepare, make lists, have lists, and begin to psych yourself into appreciating whenever that alarm comes. Uh-oh, no alarm. I've dealt with it. I have a plan. I have something that I'll go by. So you'll never get to that point where you become overwhelmed by what is to be done because you've prepared. I know I have a friend who whenever, for example, she is required to travel, 2 weeks, and I kid you not, before departure, she is packed and ready.
Mhm.
And you know and she tells you, I have to do it that way or I will go crazy with the stress. She's ready. And she's one of those people. I remember when it was her 60th birthday, she was planning a big bash, and she spoke to us 6 months before, and she was telling us, I'm having this for my birthday. And I turned to the third person who was in a group, and I said, if I know her well, that situation is all planned, booked, everything is in order, and she can tell you now exactly how much it will cost. And she laughed and she said, Clovis, you know me too well. 6 months before.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, that's something I have to work on because I'm also a procrastinator. So I'll have to
Uh,
work on that.
yeah, so one is leading to the other, yes.
Yes. So thank you.
Sister Jennifer, you may have to invite a person or two to comment or to ask a question. Call a name.
Oh, let's see if I can find a name, somebody to comment. Let me see who I see. I see Heather Small on. Heather, could you unmute your mic and could you share with us any questions or anything about that you want to share with us?
Hi, good night, everyone.
Hi, Heather.
I enjoyed your session, and as I was just thinking about what the young lady was just speaking about, and sometimes I too can procrastinate, but as Brother Clovis was saying, uh, no, I know how I can go about handling it. Plan, prepare, write down. I don't usually like to write down things. Like I try to keep everything in my head and say, I have to do this, I have to do that. And then the time, and I think I have time. And then I continue, I have time. And then it comes upon me, and then I am anxious about stuff. So since he gave that bit of advice, I would try to take it. But very good information, and I will be going back through the book to make sure I get everything down pat. Thank
Thank you
you.
very much, Sister Heather.
Thank you,
Actually, there are
Heather.
two hands raised, Sister Jennifer. I don't know if you saw that. I think John and Amelia O'Neill have a hand raised, and I think Josie and Knight may have a hand raised.
Go ahead, John.
Good night to everyone. My question is pretty simple. How does the types of the personalities affect these people making decision making? Um, could you elaborate?
But yes, it is very interesting. I was actually I was, as Jeanafer was doing it, I kind of went and looked at how our personality types, relate very often to decision making, and um, how they deal with issues like conflict and so on. Um, and it does impact. In other words, the person whose personality is, they don't want trouble, they want everything to be nice and peaceful. Um, they would put off making tough decisions. They would put off making sensitive decisions. Um, and then you have, people who are um, strong personalities. They like tough decisions, planning, so on. Those people are well prepared. It's almost as though they're saying, well, bring on the fight. They're ready to make a decision. The thing is that regardless of our personality type, decision making is part of life. These are things we have to do. And I like to say it is best to start somewhere. Listen, we know we have to do breakfast tomorrow morning and we have to eat something.
Mhm.
Why not start thinking about it tonight? Don't wait until tomorrow. And I know the ladies are laughing
True.
because I know they get up and they go, what am I gonna have for breakfast? Um, and I know the men are saying, I don't know about you. If I'm hungry, I will find something to eat. First thing I put my mind on, I will grab it, heat it up, and I'm ready.
Good luck.
But
Very good.
personality type does impact decision making. The flip side of that is that decision making is necessary. So put your personality type aside and deal with what is in front of you.
There's a question in the chat, or is there another hand raised?
I think Josiane, was it?
Yeah, good night, everyone. Just responding to the Sister Hudson's comment about leadership and anxiety. I find that when God gives you the talent of being a leader, in your professional life, people see it, in your family, people see it, and in your church, people see it. And you can reach a point where you are anxious simply because you are overcommitting, simply because you are unable to say no. You may have plans, but because your heart is soft and you're always available to people, you allow people to push those plans aside. And for a lot of the time, it works. God redeems the time for you. Sometimes you push your work aside and you do the work of God. God brings back the time. But in the midst of it, sometimes the anxiety can become overwhelming, especially if you have a superwoman syndrome. A lot of women have that, where they multitask, they could get a lot of things do. And sometimes you're perishing and the people around you don't quite perceive that you are. And sometimes you don't want to say no because you don't want it to appear as if you are giving in, you are becoming weary and well doing. You don't want to support persons around you. But I think sometimes it is the overcommitting that really would bring the anxiety. There's a song that BJ Thomas sings. He says, I need to be still and let God love me. Regardless sometimes of how people feel. If they love you, they will understand. They will come back to you. But sometimes we just gotta be still and let the Lord calm us and love us and say, all right, not today. Somebody else will help. Somebody else will do it. And if we are in fellowship with one another, we can come back and say, look, I can manage that. And we will pray that our brothers and sisters will understand, recognizing that we are all human. But sometimes we look on at people in church and we always push the work upon them, get them, they're gonna do it, you know, and don't sit back to think, well, but how she managing or how he managing though? Yeah, so I think sometimes we overcommit and sometimes people assume that we're gonna be able to do it and don't really think about what we are capable of doing and still feeling like ourselves. Because sometimes we can get lost in the fray, and then we losing our joy and we stooping and thing, and everybody wanna know why we are so antagonistic. What wrong with you? But it's just it becomes too much. So
Mhm,
I think we
mhm.
just gotta deal with that overcommitting thing, be able to say no and know that people will still love us, and most importantly, that God will still love us because He reads our hearts. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
Thank you
thanks,
very
thanks,
much.
thanks for sharing.
I can relate to that overcommitting thing. In church, we get the um, thinking that because you're doing it for God, it's good. But there was a point in my life I realized that like the sister said, you just wanted to be accommodate. You just want to be accommodating to everyone. And I think as believers, and I think women do it a lot because in addition to church work, we have our secular work and we have families and we have children. And it's something that happens in church when people realize that you can do something. Um, you find that you get asked a lot and you think, okay, this is God's will, but it's a very thin line you have to know, and you have to know what you can handle, and you have to know how to say no, right? Because at the end of the day, I always say your responsibility is to God first and to your family.
Yeah, yeah,
Church comes up somewhere after that. And a lot of us women make that mistake, and we think it's God and church in the same thing. And
yeah,
church
yeah,
work can really wear you out,
yeah,
and it can put you under pressure. And like she said, sometimes you are on edge and you do not even realize you are on edge. Somebody
yeah,
else has to tell you that's not like you,
yeah,
you know? So as
yeah,
women out there who are busy in church and have families and thing, I just want to say, yes, that is so true. So we have to be so careful, and we have to, pace ourselves out. God
yeah,
doesn't want us to kill ourselves. He just.
yeah. My God, my family, my ministry.
That's right. My God, my family, my ministry.
Yeah.
There's a comment in the chat. Can we say that anxiety for some persons can also come because of pressure from others?
Yeah, I think that's similar to what Sister Josiane was saying.
Yeah,
So yeah,
similarly, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, the thing about it is that I believe the bigger challenge is that too many believers are satisfied with sitting down. Um, saved to sit down. I'm saved. I'm on my way to heaven. Kind of, I don't have to do anything. So that 10% of the people are still doing 90% of the work. And if everybody would get involved, it allows stuff to go so much easier. It allows everybody to participate in the process. And that really is a big challenge. The thing about it is that many of us, especially when we are professionals, let's say in our secular settings, we come into the church and we would like to see the church operate at that same level. And when we see things done in a certain way, we jump in because we know if
Hmm.
our work colleague walks in here and sees that, it really
Hmm.
brings the whole church into the reputation of the entire church into question. And so it really my biggest um, mandate and demand of those of us who are leaders and those of us who are part of this training and who've been there for the last 3 days would be to get involved. Every Christian has three obligations. One, to spend time daily in the word and in prayer. Two, to be involved in a ministry of the church. You must. And three, to look for opportunities. In fact, ask God for opportunities to share the good news. Every Christian.
I see Reverend Payne has his hand up.
We all, even though Christians, we still remain human beings. We had our human vulnerabilities, weaknesses, physical ailments, affliction, and mental afflictions as well. I am wondering if we focus so much on what we should do within the Christian circle. And sometimes we can put so much pressure on one another as members of the body of Christ. At the same time, in terms of getting results, getting things done, and we fail to understand the humanity is affected by day-to-day challenges. There are mental afflictions. There are afflictions associated with work. And sometimes I really think that we can be so hard on one another. Take, for example, there's an issue we heard earlier of the men. The men, when it comes to men's fellowship, the men do not respond in the way that women respond. It is difficult to pull men together. And of course, our good sister said that it's easy to get men to come together when it comes to playing dominoes and also alcohol. One of the problems we have been faced with is that sometimes we are too churchy and doing quite a bit of stuff. Because we think the men's fellowship has to be structured the same way the church worship is conducted. The women's fellowship has to be conducted. And by the way, there are so many fellowships, and one can easily become overwhelmed and burn out. And that in itself can create anxiety in itself. And when you become burnout, you can't function. You just cannot function. So look, we have to understand, and we have to be very careful too as well. Sometimes we go for so much and get very little accomplished at the end of the day, all right? So one has got to proceed cautiously in terms of recognizing that the people in our congregation, our leaders, are human beings, or people in our congregations. They can take so much, they can do so much and no more. And we have to be careful we don't put pressure on one another, because that can easily happen. We are doing the work of God. Look, personally speaking, I know what the sister was talking about when she spoke of anxiety. And anxiety is a very painful thing. And you just can't deal with it by wishing it away. Of course, managing your workload can be an asset, not taking on too much responsibility, but it affects the way you eat, it affects the way you sleep, it affects the way you work, all right? And we have to be very conscious and cognizant of not throwing too much responsibility and pressure on our fellow workers within the church, because at the end of the day, that too much work can help. Anyway, look, I've said enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Karen Jordan has her hand raised. Karen Jordan.
Yeah, she's on.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
It's a real privilege to be a part of this training. And the point I wanted to bring out was first brought out in the first section when we looked at the picture of a father and a son. recognizing that we are first a child of God. We are God's creation. We are his beloved, and we are committed to him first because we are his children. We do what we do because of that relationship that we have with him. And when we came then to the end of the book, then we are talking about pastors failing in the partnership because they are intimidated. And I technically just want to encourage everybody here. We are all a part of God's solution for this world. We are all God's ambassadors, and he knows very well what he has to do with each of us, with each of all the different personalities and everything. God knows all of that. But after all, he formed you in the womb. And we do not need to be intimidated. It is not necessary for us to be. We are to be careful with what we're doing, be good stewards and all of that. Be prayerful, walk according to the Spirit, all of that wonderful stuff. But we belong to God, and we are a good part of his puzzle. Just do what he is guiding us to do. So then we are able to avoid that intimidation. And then, you fulfill that purpose that God has for you. If you're a square, you're a square. If you're a circle, you're a circle. Just be you guided by the Spirit of God. So, and enjoy the life of God, enjoy servanthood. It is fabulous. Not always easy, but it's fabulous. It is such a privilege to be a servant of God and to be able to talk to people who are looking up to you is a privilege. So be encouraged, not intimidated. We are a good piece of God's puzzle. God bless you all.
Amen. Thank you very much, sister. Thanks for the encouragement.
Philip has his hand up.
Yes, Brother Philip.
Yes, thank you. I think Sister Jordan just touched a bit on one of the things that I wanted to say. God knows us, and he formed us, and we are supposed to fit into the work that he has created for us to do, that he has given us to do. I think what happens is that sometimes persons start running, and I'm not putting this to any particular person, but just one of the things I've observed is that sometimes people start running because they see everything as, the service of God, without realizing where they are called to be and what they are called to do. So they're out there running, they're doing a lot of things, but they're missing their calling. We have got to be able to help persons to identify what their calling is and help direct them to fulfilling that calling, rather than just running around trying to do a whole lot of things that sometimes make me missing the mark totally. Earlier in the evening, Miss Greaves, Sister Greaves, you had the page and lose it. You were talking about 6 phases of decision making. And interestingly enough, you were saying that you have to know the history and the facts and all type of thing. And one thing stuck into my brain here, and that is that sometimes even in trying to make things, finding the answers to solutions, sometimes you also have to know, you have to find out. I hope I'm protected when I speak here. You have to find out what or who is the person's God, because sometimes persons get carried away with the profile and the title and all types of things, and then persons can even make pastors their God or their leaders, or that person who is very outgoing and sometimes lose their perspective as to who they're really at church to serve. And that can create a lot of problems. And I've seen where that can create a lot of problems sometimes, and persons don't realize it. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. I agree with you. Having had an experience of that already, there are persons among us who don't believe exactly what we believe. And sometimes that can cause a problem as to how do you know what they believe. I'm not sure how, I guess, group discussions, Bible studies, things like that would bring out things like that. But I can see, I see what you say, that can be a problem because there are persons among us, everybody among us, sometimes we're not sure what they believe. Okay, are there any more questions or comments?
Sister Jeanafer?
Yes, please.
I think one of the things that I've observed about leadership is that it's much easier when you're on the outside looking in. Many times you look at people and you say, well, why did our brother Clovis do that this way? Or why did he choose that? Why did he make that decision? You know, Sister Jeanafer, well, I don't know why she did that. But then when you're in the position, you realize, wait, but suddenly I'm not too sure how to do it myself. But it was so much easier to see why other people were doing it the wrong way before.
Myra, you know why I'm laughing?
Is that,
Myra, you know why I'm laughing?
Yes, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Why is that? You're laughing at me? I think one of the other thing is too that we need to recognize that there are some things we don't have to do, that there are others that can do it better. And I think sometimes as leaders, we get into that, what do you call it? When you get to the end of the year and you have to give your report, how good will it look to see that there were people doing this and somebody was doing that and somebody was doing that, and it looked like, well, you weren't doing anything as leader. And I think sometimes we get into that idea that we want to show people, maybe that's up to the early part of our sessions, the performance area where we want to show people how good we did during the year. So we don't want everybody to be seen as upfront. This person did this and this person did that. We want to have all the glory. So I think that is something too that we need to be careful of as leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Myra. Any comments, Clovis?
No, fully agreed, fully endorsed. And I think those of us who are into sports, we know of the armchair coaches and armchair, football managers. You sitting on the outside, you can always tell what should have been done and who should have been called and all of that. And when you get into it, that's when you realize that it's not as easy as it looks on the outside. Again, my request, my pleading to everyone here is to really consider your own leadership, and believe me, I'm talking to myself too. And what can you do? How can we use sessions like these to enhance our leadership, to make ourselves better? Not necessarily for ourselves, but so that we can be more useful to the kingdom. One of the things that we don't like to admit very often, but this kingdom business is results oriented.
That's right.
Kingdom business is results oriented. God expects us to achieve 65, 85, 95 percent returns. He expects big returns. He expects big things from us. And the higher up we go, as he has said, to whom much is given, much is expected, much is required. And there is the expectation that we produce. We make our jobs easier when we participate in events like these, when we allow ourselves to be part of programs that help us to grow, help us to understand, help us to improve, help us to do better. Within the body of Christ, sometimes we are guilty of setting low standards for ourselves, but God requires more. The church must grow. That is an expectation of Christ. The kingdom of God must grow, And it's okay. If we don't want to be the ones to make it grow, God will find people to make it grow. But God expects his kingdom to grow. He expects those of us that he empowers and allows to have leadership positions to do well, to grow his ministry. There is an expectation that our churches will grow, that our ministries will move out of being focused on ourselves and being focused internally to look outside. I think one of our brothers started talking about the importance of us maybe doing church differently and getting out more, doing more. I believe it must be there's need, and I want to say this sensitively. I believe there is need for us across the Caribbean field of the Church of the Nazarene to really begin to ask ourselves if we are satisfied with how we have been doing church and the results we've been getting. I think we're at that stage, because I can tell you as the person who sees the statistics, in many ways the statistics for the Church of the Nazarene on the Caribbean field, especially on the areas for SDMI, they are trending in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Further, I say not.
All right, thank you. Before we go, there's one other question in the chat. We don't want to leave anybody saying. Do you think that favoritism can play a major part in one's ability to function in their gifting? Do you want to answer that?
Short answer? Yes.
Yes. And we talked about it. We talked about that when we talked about people just seeing somebody and putting them in a position, don't know what they can do, but because they dress a certain way or look a certain way or work a certain place, then we think, okay, there's another question. How do you handle leadership when there are others? Oh, there's something went wrong. How do you handle leadership when there are others always pulling you down? Is this that is the leadership that is pulling you down? I'm not sure.
No, it says others around, I believe. Is it?
How do you handle leadership when there are others always, oh, you're the leader and others are pulling you down? Do you want to answer that? As a leader and others are pulling you down?
Yeah. I think it becomes important when we're getting involved in leadership within the body of Christ, that we be involved in leadership for which we're passionate. And just as a downplay from that, for which we've been called. So that we're doing something that we have been prepared for, purposed for. God purposes us for ministry. He prepares us for ministry. When I look at my own life, I know now, or I know when I became a Christian, what God had called me to do and why he had put me through what he had put me through, because he had some stuff that he wanted me to do, and that and some contributions that I was uniquely prepared to make to the ministry. So guess what? When I started jumping in and doing it, pardon my expression, but I didn't care what people were saying. I knew two things. One, I had giftings in those areas, so I was supremely confident. Two, God had said, come and let's do this. For me, I needed nothing else. And the truth is that with those two affirmations, I, in spite of naysayers, in spite of persons saying, and I think I've told you my story here on I think I've told the Barbados district my story, where I was asked to serve on our district Sunday School Ministries board, and the superintendent told one of the leaders told the superintendent, don't worry with him, he's just talk. And within 2 years of that having been said, I was serving as the district Sunday school superintendent. How do you fix it? How do you deal with it? And I didn't put myself there. I kid you not, I did not put myself there. I was taken kicking and screaming into the position. And at that point, God said to me, now let's go. Let's do these things that we've been calling you to do. So I want to say, don't worry with the naysayers. Confirm your own calling and confirm your own talent and move on those.